Today on the 1012 podcast, is the Texas Tech hype train for real? Ben Golan of Red Redder Sports joins us to discuss whether or not we should be buying a ticket and hopping aboard this train this season. Plus, Scott Wildcat joins us for some younger, hipper, cooler ideas for the Big 12. Football ideas, basketball ideas, baseball and softball. We've got some. You're going to want to hear them. Stick around. Welcome to the 1012, the podcast that covers all 14 teams in the Big 12 Conference, the flagship show of the 1012 Podcast Network. You can find every show on the network at 1012network.com. That's T in the number 12, the word network. I'm your host, Phillip, and thank you for joining us for an absolutely jam-packed, stuffed full, double-stuffed episode this week. Two fantastic guests. We got some younger, hipper, cooler ideas with Scott Wildcat. We've got Ben Golan to talk about the Texas Tech hype train. I have a ticket for the train. It's in the caboose. I'm not at the front of the train. Okay, I'm not paying for the rich seats. I'm fine not getting into the dining car, but I am on the train. I'm very excited to see where it goes this season. We're going to talk about that with him. I'm pumped for what we have coming down the line as we get closer and closer to football season. Closer and closer to soccer season as well. It starts a couple weeks before football does. We'll talk some Big 12 soccer here at some point soon. I'll probably have a couple of interviews that we will post to the 1012 Podcast YouTube channel. We post some exclusive stuff there, so if you are not subscribed, make sure you do so. We've got a lot of stuff coming here on the podcast, in the network, as we get closer to August. I'm very excited for a lot of things that we're going to be announcing. That's the most I'm going to tell you because, as you know, as soon as I say something specific, it will not happen. But we've got some things in the pipeline I think you're all going to be very excited about as Big 12 fans, as fans of specific schools, maybe specific sports, some big just some changes that I have worked very hard to get done this summer before the season starts. Plus, I'm doing prep work for the season. The very first of our position group ranking pods that we do each year is in the can. Two great guests. That'll be coming out soon. And we're going to do a YouTube Live next week. We're doing another YouTube Live. My goal is to do one a month. And I think I've got a pretty good idea for next week's show. It will be on Wednesday. It will be on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Central Time, God's time. Pay attention to our Twitter account. Pay attention to us on Instagram. We will have more details about that coming out. But the goal right now is Wednesday, July 26th, 8 p.m. God's time, YouTube channel, YouTube Live. I think we got a fun idea for our monthly YouTube episode that we're going to do. I'm going to keep trying to do more on YouTube, so make sure you're subscribed to us there. Like I said, this is a loaded episode. We've got a lot to get to. I'm not going to sit here and rehash Big 12 Media Days. You're aware of everything that went down there. I'm not going to sit here and spend a bunch of time on Pac-12 Media Days. Yes, I've seen all the reporting that's been coming out. The Colorado Chancellor speaking with the Denver Post saying that they would prefer to stay in the Pac-12 and expect to hear an update on a media deal on Thursday, the day this comes out. I'm sure by the time you're listening to this, there's already some information as to what they may have known. At this point, every time a Pac-12 AD, president, or chancellor has come out and said something about a deadline, my opinion is that it's not that they were wrong. It's that they got an update. It wasn't a good update. Nobody wanted to talk about it. And so we just moved on and pretended like it didn't happen. Friday is going to be an absolutely insane Pac-12 Media Days. We're all going to be paying attention for morbid reasons. I hate that Coach Sanders will not be there. Hopefully he has a quick and healthy and full recovery so we can actually see if all this talk is something. I actually want to see him coach. I want to see him at Colorado coaching. I want to see what he's doing and how it's going to work or fail either way. But I am interested to see him as a football coach at Colorado and hope that he heals completely. I'm sad that we will not be able to hear from him at Media Days. That was honestly the thing I was most excited about. I think most people were. There's plenty to be interested in. But this is a Big 12 show, so we're not going to dwell on that. Two great guests. Loaded episode. Don't forget, Last Stand hats. If you're in Oklahoma State, Texas, TCU, Texas Tech fan, go to laststandhats.com to equip your head this college football season. Fantastic designs, absolutely unique stuff, tons of different styles and fits. if you're a hat guy like me, and I didn't used to be, understand, I did not used to wear hats, and when I have long hair, I hate wearing hats. I think I look like an idiot. But when I keep my hair shorter, it looks good, and especially during the summer and in the hot months, I like a shorter haircut, and I like to wear a ball cap. And I've got a very nice collection that I've started. Some I don't wear, much to my wife's chagrin, because it's just a thing I like to collect. And I've got a couple Last Stand hats that I have added to my collection that I really like, and I think you will like as well. So go to laststandhats.com, use the promo code NETWORK12 for 10% off your order. It's NETWORK12, NETWORK12 for 10% off your order. Go to laststandhats.com, equip your head for this college football season. All right, 2 great interviews. Ben Golan, Scott Wildcat. Let's get to it.
Hey there, folks. This is Justin Hiles of the Viva La Cats podcast, which is now proudly presented by the Big 12's premier podcasting group, the 1012 Network. My co-host Steve and I cover all the ins and outs of Cincinnati football and basketball, for better or for worse. We release a new episode every single week, sometimes with guests, sometimes it's just the two of us kicking back talking Bearcats. So, if you like raw emotion and heavy recency bias, we are definitely victims of that. It clouds our conscience, and it should cloud yours too. We also have an every once in a while Twitter Spaces post-game review on our page at Viva La Cats Pod on Twitter, where we invite all of our friends and enemies to discuss everything that we just witnessed minutes prior. If you like your podcast with a laid-back environment, way too serious about stupid ideas, the deepest of stat pools, or just straight-up white noise, then you've come to your one-stop shop for everything Bearcats. Viva La Cats.
The hype train for Texas Tech has not only left the station. I mean, this thing is full throttle, blowing smoke, runaway train. It's still on the tracks. It hasn't come off the tracks just yet, but at the rate it's going, it just might, depending upon how this season goes. And so that's the topic I wanted to talk about today as one of our kind of big off-season heading into the 2023 incredible Big 12 year storylines is this Texas Tech hype train for real? Big 12 preseason poll came out. They were picked number 4th, which is easily by far the highest they've ever been picked since the Big 12 went to a round robin or to not having divisions anymore. So I needed to bring on an expert to talk about this, try and figure out if this is for real or if we're blowing smoke. Very excited to have Ben Golan here on the podcast today. Ben, welcome to the 1012.
Hey, Phillip. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's just start with the big question. I mean, you're seeing Texas Tech's name mentioned in ways in regards to the Big 12 that I don't think we have seen since the Mike Leach era. So, should we be buying into the Texas Tech hype train this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely. And it's kind of funny because a lot of the time for the past, decade plus, Tech has not had any hype at all. And any hype they had was from its own fans, from, coming straight out of Lubbock. And I was just thinking back to this offseason. You had, Brett McMurphy in mid-May. He did his bowl projections for the Action Network, and he had Texas Tech and Alabama in the Cotton Bowl. And and not only that, he posted the lines too. He had Alabama as a 4-point favorite in that game. To me, that's as much a sign of respect as anything. And so just seeing, a national guy like that, I think, the word's starting to get out a bit. And since Joey McGuire got to Lubbock, he hasn't made a wrong move, it seems like, with the fans, with recruiting, with building the roster, just generating excitement. And, I think the team that he has this year, they're very old, inexperienced, which, is probably the most important thing, but they're also very good. They have a lot of depth everywhere. And they just, like I said, recruiting wise, they continue to add talented players, and basically everyone returns from the team last year. Yeah, you lose a couple of guys. Tyree Wilson's probably the big one, but you're able to replace him. You bring in Miles Cole, you bring in Steve Linton. They just bring in these waves of guys, and the roster's looking pretty good. It's why they were picked 4th in a 14-team league, which is a pretty healthy sign of respect right there.
Yeah, I don't think we should downplay too much the loss of Tyree Wilson, and it is an experienced team, though. We always want to preach returning experience is only good if it's good returning experience. But I get the Joey McGuire has built hype around Texas Tech. I mean, since he got hired, there has been buzz around this program, constant, never-ending buzz, and they've done it very cleverly through the way that they handled recruiting last year, getting up as high as number 1 with the class. And no, everyone knew it wouldn't last, but I mean, just they've been doing things very smartly to build legitimate buzz for a program. And suddenly it feels like there is a higher ceiling than we've seen at Texas Tech again since Mike Leach was there. Now, I've always felt like this was a program that needed a couple of years to build, and year 3 would be the year. And so, but here we are in year 2. They had, I think, a even better than expected year 1. And now the buzz around Texas Tech, Shahan Jeyarajah, who we have a lot of respect for, picked them as the Texas Tech as the Big 12 dark horse. We've seen other people kind of circle Texas Tech as the quote unquote dark horse candidate for the Big 12. Is that fair? Do you think Texas Tech is the dark horse in the Big 12? And when we say dark horse, we are talking about like team that could make the Big 12 championship game. Maybe not win it, but at least get there. Is Texas Tech in your mind the dark horse, or are they kind of one amongst a mix of teams?
I think if you would have asked me this, a couple of months ago, yeah, absolutely. But as we just talked about, they're getting a lot of hype. You're picked 4th. I mean, there's expectations in Lubbock amongst, not only the staff, as there always is every year, but amongst the fans and just, national media too. So, dark horse, as far as, yeah, they're a program that hasn't had much success, but I don't think it would shock anyone if they make a run this year. It's interesting with the new Big 12 schedule. It's not a full round robin. And so I'm interested to see how that plays into that, because I'm looking at a team like Oklahoma, where they get to avoid Kansas State, Tech, and Baylor. They have an extremely favorable schedule. Whereas, you could see Texas, Kansas State, Texas Tech, TCU, all those schools kind of beating up on each other. But yeah, I mean, I think Texas Tech has as good of a shot as anyone, considering their coaching staff. They're really high on both coordinators. I think Zach Kittley, his year 1 maybe didn't go as well as he wanted it to go. He had some injuries at quarterback, but Tim DeRuyter, what he did in year 1 with the defense, was pretty special. And then they're just looking to build on top of that. So, I mean, I would consider them, yeah, I mean, one of the dark horses for sure.
This is a topic I think we've really got to start building. Is I don't think, especially with the reactions to the Big 12 preseason poll, I don't think Big 12 fans have fully wrapped their mind around the fact that for the first time in more than a decade, you have unbalanced schedules in Big 12 football. It is not, and you'll have the same problem in basketball. It's not a round robin. And so, yeah, even when there was a round robin, there was slightly unbalanced because, OU didn't have to play themselves. Whoever the best team in the Big 12 was that year didn't have to play themselves, so they had the easiest Big 12 schedule. But now you have truly unbalanced schedules. And you said it, like Oklahoma got a gift from the Big 12. They have one of the easiest schedules this year because of who they avoid. Oklahoma State, some people, I'm a little bit higher on Oklahoma State than the poll was, but that's because I think they have the easiest schedule in the Big 12. Texas Tech got a schedule that's kind of middle of the pack. And they've got to face Baylor. They've got to face Kansas State. They've got to face Texas. They've got to face a bunch of the teams who people have high expectations for. And I understand that, look, the teams picked to make the Big 12 title game, not named Oklahoma since it came back, are all picked like 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And so we have no idea how this conference is actually going to pan out, especially this year with 4 brand new teams. But going into the season, Tech doesn't have the easiest path. You've got to face Oregon in the non-conference, and you're starting the year with a quarterback who is injury-prone and has a history of not staying healthy. And so I think my thing with Texas Tech as a dark horse is they're the easiest pick to say a dark horse. I think some people might say Kansas. I just don't feel as confident in them as a dark horse as I did Kansas State last year, who to me was the dark horse candidate, and they ended up winning the Big 12.
It's a good point. I mean, Kansas State's been a program that did it for many years. Texas Tech just hasn't. You mentioned Kansas. I don't think, maybe not to get on a fun tangent, but I don't think their defense is there yet. They're obviously going to score the ball, score a lot of points. Kansas is, but I think with, like I said previously, with what Texas Tech can do on both sides of the ball, that just kind of, they're just solid all around, man. And you're going to give yourself a chance every week, like they did last year, where the only game that got away from them was the Baylor game. Every other game they had a lead in the fourth quarter, I believe. And so, you give yourself a chance. It's all you can ask for.
Yeah, and I do think, our friends over at the Tortillas and Takes podcast, the Texas Tech podcast here for the 1012 network, like their whole point of Behren Morton's the best backup quarterback in the Big 12. And I think that might be a very valid point, as from what we've seen from him, there is a lot of expectation for what Behren Morton will be when he becomes the starter at Texas Tech full time. And so you have to feel somewhat confident that if something happens to Tyler Shuck, as we have seen happen in the past, you feel fairly good about the guy behind him who will have to take over the reins. We saw it with Kansas State last year. It took two quarterbacks to get to the end of the season. I don't know if we're going to see a Will Howard step up in the way we did from Will Howard pre-2022 and then 2022 season. But, I mean, you do have to feel at least good that it's not a massive drop-off maybe if you do end up having to have Behren Morton start some games for Texas Tech this year.
Yeah, it's a great point. With Shuck, I mean, it really does come down to his health. Anytime he's been healthy, he's been pretty special on the field. You look at the last 4 games of last year, what he did, going 4-0 and beating Kansas, beating Iowa State, beating Oklahoma, and then Ole Miss in the bowl game. And that's really what Texas. This is, I mean, I feel like I repeat this out on every podcast I've done for the last 3 years, but Tech hasn't had, QB1 stay healthy since 2017. So it's been 5 seasons now of just guys coming in, whoever wins the job gets hurt. And I also have huge hopes for Behren Morton, but at some point you just have to have your guys stay healthy. And Tyler Shuck, for Texas Tech to have the season that they want, it has to be Shuck. Just the leadership he brings, the things he can do with his legs, throwing the ball, knowing the offense, and yeah, he just has to stay healthy. So
yeah, offensive line is going to be very interesting for Texas Tech to see if they can keep their quarterback off the ground. All right, so let's ask the question for Texas Tech to me, which is what needs to happen for Texas Tech to not just meet the building and growing expectations for the football program this season, but maybe even succeed them or exceed them and pull off what Kansas State did last year, come out of a top 4 ranking and be that team that people were kind of high on, but actually goes out and makes the Big 12 championship game or wins the Big 12.
Yeah, you just hit the nail on the head with the last point. It's having the offensive line protect Tyler Shuck, which is kind of an easy answer, but you just look across the board. They're pretty good everywhere else. They have a really old secondary, really old defensive line. Linebackers are kind of young. You lost Krishawn Merriweather and Kosai Eldridge, but and the offensive line struggled last year. But I think what gives you hope is you brought in your potentially your 2 best guys are going to be transfers from Western Kentucky. Rusty Stats, the center, and then Cole Spencer, the left guard, who was actually here last year, but he had to redshirt due to an injury. And then you also have Caleb Rogers as a senior returning, Dennis Wilburn's a super senior returning, and then Monroe Mills is a returning starting tackle. So, all these guys have played a lot of football and they're all really old, which again, I just think matters. And it just comes down to Tyler Shuck staying healthy. If he stays healthy, they have a shot against anyone in this league. And the rest will take care of itself.
I mean, I think the style of play and the scheme offensively masks a lot of the offensive line issues for Texas Tech. It's just, do they make enough of a step forward that they're able to do that much better? I mean, you look at last year, they were last in the Big 12 in sacks and tackles for loss allowed. It's just that everywhere else they were middle of the pack at best nationally. So, I mean, if this is an offensive line that takes a step forward, and I do think having a healthy Cole Spencer this year with the expectations everyone had for him last year, having him healthy this year and having Stats this year should be a big positive for Texas Tech. And I believe that a healthy QB1 and an improved offensive line are going to be the things that really decide whether or not Texas Tech meets these growing expectations for the 2023 season.
Yeah, and to go along with that sack stat, I think Donovan Smith did a great job last year, filling in as he could, but he also took a lot of those sacks. I mean, you think of that game against Houston, I think there were probably like 7, 8 sacks that game alone. And Behren Morton, whenever he played 4 games, true freshman's kind of running around out there at the time. So, I do think that a lot of that had to do with quarterback play. And then Zach Kelly, people forget Western Kentucky was number either 1 or 2 in the nation in offense the year before he got to Tech. He had some big time offers this offseason to go join other programs. And, you know, his star hasn't faded at all. I think he would be the first one to admit that the offense didn't perform up to his capabilities, but I think he's excited with what they've got returning and what they've added, you know, to go coach this offense this season.
Yeah, he likes to run the ball. People are like, "Oh, it's air raid. They just throw the ball 1,000." No, he wants to run the ball and do so effectively. Ben, you have been awesome. I appreciate it. I'm psyched for this Texas Tech season. Look, I just keep hammering it. This is going to be. We've never had a season in college football like what the Big 12 is about to have. We'll probably never have another one like it. This is going to be an absolutely incredible year. You're going to want to be glued to your screen for every single game in conference because they're going to be so interesting and competitive. And I think Texas Tech is primed for. Like, I think they're primed for a good year. Even if a good year is one win more than last year and just continuing to build, I do think that this is a program that is finally moving in the right direction. It's finally nailed the head coach hire, who has nailed his coordinator hires, and they are filling this roster with depth of talent that they have not seen at Texas Tech in a very long time. So I am excited for Texas Tech this season and for the direction this program is going. Ben, do me a favor. You do an incredible job covering Texas Tech. Where can everybody check out the work you do?
Yeah, thank you. RedRaidersports.com. We're part of the Rivals Network, Texas Tech Rivals. So yeah, you know, I cover recruiting. We have a whole staff that covers basketball, football, baseball, whatever you're interested in. Come find us, RedRaidersports.com.
Ben, again, appreciate it, man, and good luck to your team this fall.
Thanks, Phillip. Appreciate it.
Welcome one, welcome all, and you are listening live to the one, the only Tortillas and Takes podcast.
From football to softball to track and field, tune in to get the best coverage in everything that is Texas Tech.
Not only that, but find out what unsuspecting star we get to interview and put on the hot seat.
Whether you like corn or flour, eating them or throwing them, this tortilla is for you. So listen to Tortillas and Takes.
And as always, stay wrecked, people.
The season is getting closer and closer and closer. In the meantime, though, I've had, the offseason gives you a lot of time to brainstorm and a lot of time to think and a lot of time to ponder. And Brett Yormark certainly helps that with all the creative things that he has put in place for the Big 12 and all the things coming up. We addressed so many of those at Big 12 Media Days, so many crazy things that have happened already in a year's time and a lot of things on the horizon. And it got me and my good friend thinking, what are some younger, hipper, cooler ideas that we might have that we'd want to pitch to Mr. Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner? So joining me today, my good friend Scott Wildcat, as you know him on Twitter, the host of Boscoe's Boys, the best friend, the sidekick to Chauncey. Scott, welcome back to the 1012, man.
I love it. It's always like my favorite day when I get to come on with you. And you know what? We're coming up close on a year of me being with the 1012 network, the network as a whole, and making that a part, that arrangement even more kind of exclusive. I'm pumped that, it took a while to happen. And I've just, over the last year, being able to come on with you more, connect with the other shows in the network, even though my, association with you at one singular time got a pretty hefty Twitter troll. I wouldn't have changed it for anything. So I'm happy to be back on the flagship show, and I'm a very happy member now coming up on a year of the 1012 network.
Yeah, you fool. How dare you join us? Look, we took us a very long time to get a Kansas State podcast because we were biding time and waiting. When I find one I want, I will wait it out, just slowly but surely.
I mean, that's like a early 2000s, soft rock ballad. I will wait for you. I'm sure there's a song that goes like that. I'm sure there is.
Maybe we need a soft rock Big 12 anthem is what we actually need. There's an idea. Okay, so as I mentioned, Scott and I have put together our own list of younger, hipper, cooler ideas. And look, since he took over, we've seen building Big 12 championship games into full-fledged events. You've got Shaq coming down to DJ at men's basketball. You've seen unique food items at basketball and at baseball, which were awesome. You saw hooking up with Frogtown Brewery out in California for the national championship with TCU there, which was a really cool idea. Like they have built that. You got Big 12 Mexico on the horizon with some non-conference and some exhibition games for soccer and basketball and I like all these things keep coming. All these new ideas keep coming out. And they're not all going to be perfect. That's okay. But when you're trying to close a massive gap, the best way to do so is incrementally with small things. And so you and I have just kind of pitched some ideas, some things that, man, I would like to see them do this, or I think this would be a cool idea. Or here's ways to continue to grow the brand of the Big 12. And that is what it is all about, is growing the brand, the name of the Big 12, the brand of the Big 12, the awareness for the Big 12, making the Big 12 cool, younger, hipper, and cooler. And I think that has been, they've been working towards that endeavor. I think looking at media days and looking at the design used, looking at the new video that's been put out, I think they've done a very good job so far. But we've got some ideas of our own. Scott, as my guest, I'm going to let you kind of kick things off. You're sitting in front of Brett Yormark. You've got his ear. He's listening intently. What's the first idea you might pitch to him for the Big 12?
So I kind of have it broken out. There's 4 kind of pillars, and there's a lot of ideas under these pillars. So as usual, I'm probably bringing more to the show than what you actually want me to do. So I'll actually kind of go with you, because I like all 4 of my pillars. So I have kind of miscellaneous, I have social media and social media adjacent. Then I have football and basketball. Which one do you want me to start with? And we'll kind of go from there.
I'll take football for 200, Alex.
Okay, so football, and this is one where some of these I don't think the current Big 12 fans are gonna like. I have some in here that they straight up will not like. But I think this would kind of bring brand awareness, and I think it would kind of make it cool and kind of bring in eyeballs and fans that maybe usually would not be like, oh, I'm a Big 12 fan. And basically both of them are about creating events, and creating one of these would be a absolute tent pole to the conference. And that is the Big 12 International Kickoff. So you would need a TV partner, and with all of these, you can sign branding deals, you can sign marketing deals. But we're all starved for college football. You and I are both probably counting down the days. And I think if you can get a broadcast partner on board for this, you go with a double header on week 0. So we can do the Delta Airlines Big 12 International week 0 kickoff. Now, this is where folks are going to get pissed off. It can't be a throwaway game. I'm not saying it has to be a conference game. But if it's not a conference game, it has to be a Power 5 non-con. But you would have back-to-back games. The nightcap is Big 12 Mexico, an actual football game in Monterey, not a bowl game. An actual game on week 0 has to be at night, because, Mexico, last weekend in August, it's going to be hot. And then the other one, actually, and there's been no indications that this would happen, but I have like kind of a passion project about American football in Europe. I did, like, back in college in my speech class, I took 2 speech classes, and like some of my like big long speeches have been about the NFL expansion to Europe. Well, there is a fever pitch, there is a bloodthirst, there is a demand for American football in Germany, and it is not being met just by 1 or 2 NFL games. So the first game, so it would be maybe 2 p.m. Central time here in God's time zone. It would be a night game over in Germany. So you have a game in Germany followed up by a game in Monterrey, Mexico for your Big 12 International kickoff on week 0. And they'd have to be marquee games. So you're losing, in theory, K-State would have to lose that, game versus the University of Arizona, a Power 5 non-con, or K-State Houston is going to have to be in Houston or Monterey or Germany. So yes, I get it. That sucks for the average season ticket holder fan. It would not be ideal, but sometimes you have to give a little bit to see some massive growth to really bring some eyeballs. And I think something like that would be massive. So that's my first football idea.
The Horns and Horses podcast, which is a German Big 12 podcast, I shit you not, would appreciate a Big 12 game in the country of Germany. Look, this is a Big 12 podcast. And so what I always want to remind everybody, like, I am on board with things that benefit the conference as a whole. So sometimes I have to set my individual fandom aside. I am pro a actual regular season game in Mexico, not just a bowl game. I am pro that. Football, I think you should do more than just one non-con in basketball. Like, I think you put a 4-game event in Mexico, 2 men's, 2 women's games. You can make them conference games. Like, I think that's something, if you're really going to build a fan base south of the border, giving them the scraps is not going to do that. They announced the Big 12 Media Days, Big 12 Championship game. The Big 12 is going to have a conference Spanish radio broadcast of the conference championship game for the first time. OU games who are losing your mind. We all know you've broadcast the conference championship game when you're in it in Spanish. That's not the same damn thing. Y'all, calm down. I think you have to do something different and real to grow the brand, because this is about brand building, and it's not fun for the older fans who've been around for a long time and don't care about that stuff. But if you're going to grow the Big 12, if you want TV execs to spend more money on the Big 12, the brand has to grow. And it can't just grow, as we've said, by, well, we're going to having a big freshman class incoming. Great. Everyone does. Like, you have to find new places for fans outside of just your university. And so I'm all for it. I'm good with it. I like the idea. I understand why people won't like it. Just like I understand why people aren't going to like when they're more Thursday and Friday games.
Which actually, that's my second big idea.
And yes. And I wonder if it's the same. I know you and I have talked about this back and forth. I'll shout out to Allison Renner, who's diehard Kansas State fan, who mentioned something.
Allison's
very
a listener to the podcast and she's a follower. But it's not quite like that. I want to, yours might, cause mine is different. But I think we might go that I'll get mine in and then I'll let you do your Thursday, Friday, because it could work with yours. But every Friday night you have the Friday Night Lights tour. So this has nothing to do with TV networks. This is about younger, hipper, cooler, for the current college students. With every Friday night home game, the Big 12, again, you want some sponsors here. Get with Sonic Hard Seltzers. You get to the campus, you set up a massive tailgate party with your booze sponsor and your food sponsor, and then you have a DJ. You create a massive, true party atmosphere at the student tailgate lots for every home Friday game. Well, one Friday game a week. Again, if KU's deciding to play Missouri State on a Friday, but that's not the Friday Night Lights tour. The Friday Night Lights tour is, Penn State coming to Morgantown. That's the Friday Night Lights tour where you have a legitimate DJ, you have a party atmosphere, and it's all surrounding making that Friday Night Lights game for your student body, your student fans, a massive event where they come through and you're like, oh my God, this was so much fun. And then you do cross posting with socials on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, whatever the kids are on. Threads. I don't know if the kids are on Threads, but the Friday Night Lights tailgate tour for the student fans. So that is my Friday idea. And then it can probably lead into maybe what you had.
Well, I love it. I think it's fun. And again, it fits with what they're doing with the championship games and making those events. You've got to continue to make these things events more than just the game. That's going to draw more people around the games, and in theory might get more people interested in the games just because it's something that's also going on. The idea of this was just that idea was having Oklahoma State and Kansas State be the first Friday night game of the Big 12 season every year, and I am for establishing no one should have to play more than one Friday night game a year. No one. Like, we just needed that will be and I don't really want more than like one midweek.
Unless you're KU and you volunteer it every year.
That's fine.
But I like, unless you're volunteering getting your non-con.
I like two things about Thursday, Friday games are happening, people. This isn't like, I know they're like, well, we're kind of mentioned and teased, like it's part of the contract, get you to it. They're soft launching this so that you are aware this is coming down the line and it's going to be every week. That's just the reality. I understand. Again, I understand why fans don't like Thursday, Friday games. I understand especially why we don't like Friday games. Like Thursday used to be college football night, and then the NFL took it over. Friday is supposed to be high school football night. Well, then college football got pushed more to Friday. I understand why fans don't like Thursday, Friday games. I get it. I totally do. It's going to happen. How do you make it as fun as possible? How do you make it as interesting as possible? Give me good games. Give me they don't have to be a rivalry game. We don't have to put the Butt Bowl and the Revivalry on a Friday every year. But if you establish some Friday rivalries, we know that Oklahoma State, Kansas State, when they meet, they're going to meet every year to keep that Big 8 matchup alive, and they're always going to meet on a Friday. It's going to be, whether it's the first Friday, but that is one of our established Friday night games. And I like the idea of kind of having we know that game's going to be on a Friday. Every year it's going to be on a Friday, whether it's in Manhattan or in Stillwater. Same thing for, I don't know, Cincinnati, Iowa State. Because Cincinnati, West Virginia is more of the rivalry. Cincinnati, Iowa State is going to be just kind of, it's a proximity. It's two teams that are excited to be able to play each other. We're going to put you on a Friday night every year. We're going to do it earlier in the year before it gets freezing cold. I like the idea of having some established, we know these are on Fridays. I think it helps. It almost builds some excitement around Fridays other than just what Big 12 game is it this? Okay, it's that. No. It's the first Friday of the season. It's the first game of the season every year. We're going to kick off with this classic Big 8 game between Oklahoma State and Kansas State, or Kansas and Iowa State, or whatever. Just set some standard things so that we have some expectations going in. Which leads me to my idea number one. I have shifted around a lot on my view on how we should handle retaining rivalries, building new rivalries. What do we do in the Big 12? I'm stealing the Big 10's idea. I loved what the Big 10 did. Because for a while it was, let's give everybody 3 rivals. Let's give everybody one rivalry. I had talked to an AD who was kind of, we don't only have one. We don't all need 2 or 3. And I think there's varying opinions. And what the Big 10 did makes a lot of sense, because somehow Penn State doesn't have a rivalry in the Big 10. Ohio State's got a couple. I think Nebraska's got 6 rivalry games. I think they just play the same 6 teams at kid. It's kind of it varies by team, and I think that makes sense. Now, the idea of not having a rivalry is weird to me. We just don't we don't care. Well, no, we want to have, because I want a rivalry weekend. There has to be a weekend, not the last weekend of the season, because you have a lot of things going on then. You don't know how the schedules are going to be able to stack up. But I want it to I want it on whatever is supposed to typically be SoCon Saturday in the SEC. That's when I want rivalry weekend. That's the weekend I want that played, because it's typically a lighter weekend around week 11.
That's amazing.
And so it's a lighter weekend.
Love that.
Build it on that weekend. That is the weekend I want it. I want, and I'm sorry for rivalries where they like to play this. I want Sunflower Showdown that weekend. I want Revivalry that weekend. I forget what West Virginia Cincinnati's game is called. Yeah. I want that game that weekend. No. I want that. You need an established Big 12, branded as such, promoted as such. It is rival. There used to be you used to have the ESPN kind of does rivalry week, right, in basketball, and there's usually some rivalries, and sometimes it's random games. It's rivalry week. It's no, they just play every year. It's not a rivalry. I want the same teams play this weekend every year. Every single year, same teams play this weekend. That's just what it's going to be. Figure out what those are, establish those, lock them down, and give it to us. I think we need when you have with the conference the way it is now, 12 teams, maybe 14 eventually. Schedule's going to go through with a 9 game. You're going to play through all these teams. That's great. I still want some. I know who a couple teams I'm going to play every year. You're still going to be able to get through everybody. It's only 12 teams. Even if you get to 14, even if 16, you're still going to play everybody. I want some, I know what I have. Because right now, it's fun and exciting because it's new and different. But I, as an Oklahoma State fan, I hate that they're not playing any of the teams from Texas except Houston. I don't like that. I want a rivalry. I want to know, with Bedlam going away, there's a team every year I can love hating watching that game. Even if it's not the same, and I'm not saying it to force a rivalry, but I want one team I know. They're on the schedule every single year. Let's make it happen on SoCon Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely love the idea of hey, we're going to counter program the SEC basically having an in-season bye. Absolutely love that. Here's my question for you. This was my instant reaction when I saw the Big Ten and how they were establishing that. Have they like released like a 4-year cycle? Because I understand like, hey, some teams have 3 rivals. You know, in my perfect world, K-State would play KU, Iowa State, Oklahoma State every single year. And I know BYU probably doesn't have an ideal 3. West Virginia claims they don't have a single rival in the world except for Pitt.
And Penn State.
Have they like
and Virginia
released,
Tech.
like
Virginia Tech.
Yeah, well, okay, whatever. I'm trying to make jokes here.
No, it's still funny.
The idea of the reason why I loved the 3 protected games so much is, hey, it guaranteed some level of quote unquote balanced schedule. Hey, you have your 3 teams, but everyone will play everyone at least twice in 4 years. Did the Big Ten commit to something like that? I mean, because that's the only thing that like I would worry about, because I don't want, I would be fine again. I say this as a school that has an obvious 3 quote unquote rivals that would fit very neatly into this model. But I don't want to have a situation where, you know, K-State plays UCF once in 8 years or something like that. And I just don't know if it would be like that or not. I'd want to see like a 4-year, I would want to see it whenever it happens. And I wish someone would have pressed Brett Yormark on this a little bit. And I know they're not going to say anything because they're still lusting after some more teams. But I wish they would have pressed him a little bit more about future conference scheduling. Because whenever it happens, I want to see a 4-year schedule released. I want it released every 4 years. Here's your teams for 2025. Here's 2026. Here's 2027. Here's 2028. That's what I think they should do every 4 years.
Until this conference grows to a point where we have to worry about that, I think you're okay. At 12 teams, we're fine. At 14, we're not playing 8 games, we're playing 9, and we're not going to have divisions, so it's not like we're only going to play one team from the other side every year. Like, not having divisions and having a 9-game schedule solves the issue of we won't pull an SEC where Georgia still hasn't gone to Texas A&M somehow.
That's true. But all in all, I absolutely love your idea. And I also kind of like the idea of, hey, the Friday night matchup, if there are kind of C-list rivalry games, you know, for K-State, it would be Oklahoma State, or, you know, possibly some folks want it to be like Texas Tech because, you know, that original Big 12 game. I don't know. I want Big 8. I want as much Big 8 as I can get. Having those be the Friday night, I think that is like, that is perfect. I think we
protect
need to
Farmageddon at all costs. Protect Farmageddon.
Well, I mean, if Jamie Pollard has his way, I don't know, but
BYU is the Iowa State's new Big 12 rival, says Jamie Pollard. Okay.
And who was the first one to tell you that? I mean, it was this guy. The only other thing I had for football, by the way, and Brett Yormark actually touched on this, make it like the Super Bowl. Give me as big an act as you can get singing the Super Bowl, and give me a legit halftime show that the network sticks with instead of going to a crappy, studio show. Because guess what? There are no other games going on at 11 a.m., which I'm fine with. I'm fine with the Big 12. Hey, we're 11 a.m. on Saturday. What? There's nothing else.
Isn't there like the MAC game or somebody else going on? There's one of the G5s, I think is. But it doesn't matter. There's not another Power 5 game going. You're the only Power 5 one.
Give the people the Carly Rae Jepsen halftime show that they want and deserve. So that's all I had for football. That was my list. Those are my 3 football ideas.
All right, here's my last football idea is this. I want a neutral site game in California. I want a neutral site Big 12 game. And now let me finish. This is not for everybody. For now, this is only for TCU and BYU. 2 reasons. One, TCU has a very large alumni base in the state of California. It's why they had so many fans show up for the national championship game. It's not just because they're in the national championship game. They have a very large alumni base in the state of California. BYU's got a large alumni base all over the country. You are going to establish this with BYU and TCU for now. Here's the real reason you do this. One of the issues...
Like them playing each other? Okay. Them playing each other?
Each other.
Okay.
In California. Now, this is just for if you were to start this in 24 and we have our 12-team conference. Here's the other reason to do this. 1, it's expanding your reach of the conference. 2, it's going to an area that makes sense with the alumni bases. 3, one of the issues that the, let's say, schools out west in another conference might have with leaving their current situation to go to a Big 12 conference is how much of their alumni base is located on the West Coast in the state of California, and joining the Big 12 no longer allows them access to having games close to them unless those schools decide to schedule non-cons in the state of California. But if you were to establish a regular Big 12 game in California at an NFL stadium in a neutral site, or allow TCU, BYU, and 2 other teams out west to rotate through that so that each one hosted once every 4 years and really only gave up one home game every 4 years, but got to be in that on a little more common basis, I think that would, while not solving the problem, might help soften the blow for those alumni of, say, I don't know, Colorado and Arizona, who might join the Big 12 and want to be able to have games in the state that they all live in. It makes a lot of sense. It's an easy way to help attract them. It continues to expand the brand out west. And it makes sense because now you're not just going somewhere where there aren't already established fans. You have a TCU alumni base that's strong out west. You have BYU fans that are strong out west. And you'd be bringing in 2 teams from out west whose alumni bases are also out west in California. So adding a neutral site game out there, while not this is going to sell them on anything, does help expand your conference and be next to already established fan bases for schools that you would have in the conference.
Love that idea, actually. At first, I didn't know where you're going. Then you explained it. I was like, all right, this is good. Plus, again, it would give you at least one extra after dark, quote unquote, time slot to appease the TV partner. So ultimately, I love the ideas that we've come up with for football. I really do like your idea.
Thank you. Why don't you bring up basketball for 400?
Okay, so my basketball idea. First off, again, I want to pat myself on the back because again, when I originally came up with something, I had an entire episode where it's how to save the Big 12 from adding Gonzaga, and one of the ideas is, I mean, it hasn't like officially been announced, but it's been reported on. It's been multiple journalists have brought it up, and that is that extra game. Whether or not it's been reported that it wouldn't count towards the conference standing, but it's an extra Big 12 game that would be at a neutral site stadium. And again, I think Brett Yormark wants these tent poles ideas. He wants something that you can market, something that you can, go to Fox, go to ESPN, go to in the future TNT and TBS when we're spinning off the basketball rights and say, here is this major event outside of the conference tournament. And I really do think if you were to do this, you would have, if you're in a 12-team conference, you could have double headers in 3 different locations. You could have Mexico. You could have Brooklyn, New York City, where Brett Yormark so desperately wants to be. You could be in Chicago, let Iowa State fans take over a city that isn't Kansas City. You can go down to Miami. You can go to some of these different markets that are closer to some of these other Big 12 schools, but also bigger media markets or some of these passion projects for Yormark, while preserving Kansas City, which I spazzed out pretty hard. I was overthinking something that he said. And turns out, hey, he loves Kansas City. Although if you go back and listen to it, you could tell he didn't want to love Kansas City. But it is the perfect spot for the Big 12 tournament. But it allows some of these other spots, Dallas, Fort Worth, all these different places to get a piece of Big 12 basketball. So that was my number one. That's something I've been championing, for a very long time as part of stuff to appease Yormark's ego, and it looks like it's going to happen.
I forget who it was that did an interview and talked about the Big 12 talking about doing a Big 12 tournament that wouldn't count against conference play early in the non-con and having a number of teams. I love the neutral site aspect. I think it makes a lot of sense from a Big 12 standpoint to say we'll split the teams up and do a few games in Brooklyn, a few games in Mexico, a few games in Kansas City, and a few games in Vegas, and kind of cover all your bases and hit your big markets and your markets that you're trying to continue to grow representation. Now, you don't you could not do it in Kansas City. You got a pretty good representation in Kansas City as it is, but I think Mexico, Brooklyn, and Vegas really kind of appeases where he wants to be. I love that idea, and I think that's something that they're obviously talking about. And I think it's just giving people more of what they want. Big 12 basketball. Like Big 12 versus Big 12. That's good basketball. It's quality hoops. It's the best hoops in the country. Why don't we get more of it? I don't have any more basketball. I don't have a basketball specific one. I don't. I do have.
I have some. I have some more basketball if you want some more.
Lay it on
the
me.
next one, if we're gonna keep doing this Big 12 Big East battle, and I know it kind of gets lost in there. Opening day of college basketball. I don't know if you're wagging your finger. I don't know
Yes.
if this was the way you're going. And I want, if you recall, they don't do it anymore, but Grant, this would be a Fox property, but ESPN used to do the 24 hours of college basketball marathon. For mine, it wouldn't be quite 24 hours, but would be 10 hours. You tip off a game, it'd have to be in West Virginia we have 2-3 Eastern time zone schools now at this point, but you'd start on the East. You would have your first game tipping off at 10 a.m. You would have at least one more game tipping off every hour on the hour, concluding with an even years and BYU. And then if you have to go on the road, we'll give it to Texas Tech. Texas Tech can have the, super late tip off at 10 p.m. Central Time. But you have one game tipping off every hour on the different Fox broadcast partners, because who needs whatever they're running at 1 p.m. on, Fox over the air if you could have, K-State playing Villanova or Oklahoma State taking on Butler, make the first day of college basketball mean something. So that's my other one. And then
I love this. Hold on. I love this because the problem is, and we've talked about this on the show, like the Big 12 Big East battle has been underserved from a broadcast and a representation standpoint because Big 12 basketball was on ESPN and Big East was on Fox. And so it couldn't be done in a single day thing like the Big 12 SEC, which was done perfectly, where ESPN just went, this is all we care about today is the Big 12 and the SECs playing each other in basketball. We don't care about anything else that's going on. We're going to give this the full, this is all we're going to do today. And the Big 12 Big East is like, okay, this is going to be 10 games spread out over 2 weeks on 5 different channels, and good luck. No, it needs to be treated with the same reverence the Big 12 SEC Challenge was, all on Fox. Fox is going to have to go all in on it, make it a single day event, and make it an event. Treat it that way, because I think that is not doing so is wasting a fantastic property that you have and an opportunity you have to match up two of the best conferences in college basketball with two teams that continue to produce national champions.
Yeah. And again, college basketball does opening day horribly. K-State's playing USC out in Las Vegas to open it up on the opening night, but usually there's almost no marquee games on that very first night. And I get it. You want to ease into it. I think that'd be the perfect way to tip off basketball. And then this one will piss off. I've done a lot of stuff that piss off fans for football. This one's going to piss off all the basketball coaches. My final basketball one, and this would be something you could give to ESPN, Big 12 versus the World Challenge, either in late February or first Saturday in March. And this would be similar to the old school bracket buster because you don't know who's participating in it until super late. You take the 12 Big 12 schools, you're saying, hey, you 6 are at home, you 6 are on the road. And then mid-February, you'd have like 2 to 3 weeks notice so you can scout, you can get logistics around, but you would then play the 12 highest net non-Power 6 schools. So here's your Gonzaga game. Here is, the St. Mary's College Gales. Here is, all of a sudden, Wichita State's back. What? They're actually good at basketball again. They're not, but in this scenario, boom, they're getting to play a Big 12 school. If you go through and look at the net rankings, people would say, it's a lose-lose for the Big 12. You can find 12 non-Power 6 teams that are very good. That'd be a high-quality game. And again, you give it enough notice. I know it's not perfect. Logistics would be a little weird, but having this Big 12 versus the World Challenge gives something super unique. Again, allows ESPN to have a property that they get to build David versus Goliath. They get to build something up where it's okay. Here is the best of the rest versus the best basketball conference in America, and you're getting quality games. This is a better game than K-State got resume-wise hosting Florida. This is going to be a better resume game than whoever had to play Vanderbilt in, the latest SEC Big 12 challenge. So this is a resume builder for Big 12 teams, a unique property, and then also something you could give to ESPN to really mark it up. Because could you imagine, K-State having to go up and play St. Mary's College, in their tiny little arena, or KU, that's the darling. That's the David versus Goliath type game, some of these games versus the American, Texas Tech having to play North Texas, who's at the top of, well, I guess they're going to the American now. At the top of the American, are they going to the American or are they still in CUSA? I can't keep track. Yeah.
They're American now.
They were CUSA, right?
Yeah.
I can't keep track. But again, you can see all these different games. You can see what can be built up. And I think that would be, I think ESPN would have a heyday with that.
I like it. I don't have a basketball one. This is my don't do this, but it's fun. Still with the naming rights to the conference. Why do we need to be Big 12? Why can't we be Old Trapper 12? Why can't we be Sonic Hard Seltzer 12? Why can't we be Dr. Pepper 12? Why can't we be FedEx 12? Somebody really wants to fork over some money and help make up the pay gap. We will go by whatever your brand name is plus the number 12, and that will be the name of the conference as long as you want to pay. So pay up big. You want to be United 12? Okay, sure. That actually doesn't sound terrible being the United 12, even though it's United Airlines. So sell the name rights to the conference. Screw it. Let's go. That's how we don't even have to build a brand if the brand is already well established. Okay, people know who Kellogg's is.
I'm getting dark here. Are you willing to be, the Saudi Crown Prince, 12?
I mean, look, we all.
What sort of standards are we putting here?
On the plus side, the team most likely to take on a lot of Saudi money is no longer in the Big 12.
Yeah, it's Texas A&M. Someone's going to have to pay Jimbo's contract, and it's going to be.
You mean buyout?
Yeah, what'd I say? New contract. Someone's going to have to pay that out.
All right. What else you got, Scott?
All right. So here's like kind of my alternate media / social media. Go all in on YouTube. You and I actually, before we started recording this, started talking about, the rise of sports talk on YouTube. I think having, a 2 or 3 times a week, Big 12 sports talk show, but you'd need to lean young. Find some charismatic kids who know, coming from a Big 12 school, that want to get into sports broadcast, that can talk about the conference in a fun way, that is going to be able to go after, the Pat McAfee type audience. Again, you're not going to be able to be as, crazy as that, but hey, funny, getting your jokes off. And again, everything has to be signed off by the Big 12, but be able to do funny interviews with, players from the Big 12, be able to tell the story, show the personalities of the players and schools in a 2 or 3 times a week, 2-hour, talk show type format, and really kind of try to capitalize on, the young kids. They're on YouTube. Again, I'm 31. I'm about to turn 32 in December. Like I don't understand it, but I find myself kind of gravitating towards there. But that's how they're not watching Sports Center on ESPN. They're watching a random live show on YouTube, and that's how they're getting their quote unquote live sports talk. And then beyond that, have a weekly show for volleyball, women's soccer, women's basketball, softball. Have a weekly wrap-up show where it's only about the women's sports. Now, I think baseball probably needs to be folded into, the quote unquote main show. And I'm not saying you don't talk about the women's sports on the main show, the 2-3 times a week, 6 to 8 hours of sports talk. I'm not saying you don't do it, but they need to have their own weekly show. Again, ideally, probably with young women who want to get into sports broadcasting, who get to tell the stories of these teams. Because here's the thing, we're seeing a crazy rise in viewership. If the Big 12 can capitalize on it, again, you don't have LSU, you don't even have Iowa. Baylor isn't what they used to be in women's basketball. But if you can tell the stories, if you could get an emotional attachment and show a commitment saying, hey, come play at insert Big 12 school here. Look, we are putting out on our YouTube channel that we have 500,000 subscribers. We have a weekly hour-long wrap-up show talking only women's sports. That's a recruiting tool that you can point to and say, hey, look, we're trying to promote you in this NIL era. Hey, if you win Women's Basketball Player of the Week, you're going on our weekly wrap-up show. You're getting to talk. You're getting your face out there. You're getting your personality out beyond just your school. So that's another thing I want to see on YouTube. Then also in the offseason, fine. Sorry. Do you want to?
No. Yeah, I'm going to jump in because this ties into some stuff that I've got. The Big 12 does not have good representation in the media. And what I mean by that is we have become, we know the faces of the SEC. And this is across the conference and very sport specific as well. And I led to this, and I'll get to that. You know the faces of the SEC. There are strong pro Pac-12 voices that are Pac-12 alums. There's way for the Big 10. Some of the loudest Big 12 voices are OU alums in the media because Oklahoma has a very good journalism department and puts out some very prominent people into sports media who are OU people. I'm not saying that they're all going to switch to just being OU in the SEC when OU leaves, but because I think many of them are attached to the Big 12, they've been a part of the Big 12 for a long time, and they'll still be pro Big 12. But you're about to enter an era where the Big 12 does not have great representation in media. They tried to do a Big 12 show last year on ESPN Plus, and no one watched it because it was half-assed, frankly. And I don't mean that against the talent that they brought in to be on it, but it was half-assed. It was done cheaply. I don't need the network to have a network. Or I don't need the conference to have a network. I need better, as you mentioned, and I think YouTube is great. I need better representation. I need a Pat McAfee. I need people who cover the Big. I need some recognizable faces of people who are pro Big 12, represent the Big 12, cover the Big 12, talk about the Big 12, who are people that general college sports fans know, like, and listen to grow the brand. To that point. That came about because there are no Big 12 softball voices. And the strongest ones are all tied to Oklahoma, who's leaving to the SEC, and you're about to lose those. Eric Lopez of In the Circle podcast covers UCF, is going to be coming in. He's going to almost become the new kind of Big 12 voice. There's plenty of Pac-12 alum. There's plenty of SEC alum. There's plenty of Big 10 alum in softball media. There's not enough Big 12 voices because they're all OU and they're all leaving. So softball led me to this. Softball also leads me to this is the sport that, look, I am biased because I love college softball, and here at the 1012 Network, that's the sport we love to push in the spring. I can't believe I mentioned the Big Ten did something good again. Last year before, Big Ten had a media days for volleyball because the Big Ten cares about Big Ten volleyball. Like, they care about volleyball. They had Big Ten volleyball media days, and I saw national college sports people who cover football and all go to this and cover it, and it was a nice thing. They did it one time and they didn't do it again. I need this for baseball and softball. I need this for your Olympic sports you're trying to grow. This needs to happen. I understand logistically it's tough. It's hard to make that work. They don't have the budgets that football does, that basketball does. Big 12, figure it out. I want a Big 12 softball media day. Baseball day 1, softball day 2. Get who you can there. If it's just the coaches and you do zoom ins from some players, if it's just a player and a softball coach, that's fine. I don't care. You're trying to grow basketball. That's the priority. I understand that. Football is number 1. I get that. Baseball's number 3 in the Big 12. Softball should be number 4. It should just be better. And I don't mean this as a shot at tennis, as a shot at soccer, cross country, wrestling, any of those things. You have ignored softball despite having Oklahoma in the conference for this whole time. Texas, the rise of Oklahoma State. UCF is joining. Texas Tech is figuring things out. Like, Baylor is consistently good. Iowa State's fun. Like, you have ignored softball to your detriment. And this is frankly just the whole Bob Bowlesby era has been just kind of, we don't really invest in any of this stuff. We just trudge along and do what we do. And now you have someone coming in who's actually trying to invest and grow the brand of the conference. Baseball and softball is untapped potential and needs strong voices promoting the conference to get it better situated. I want softball, baseball media days. I want better representation. Like, these are things and ways to grow the sport by giving people more easy access. And let me tell you, we had all but 3 of the coaches who will be in the Big 12 in softball on the podcast last season. They want to come and talk and promote their sport. They want to grow the sport. They are eager to do so. Let them and give people access to them who want to help it grow.
Yeah, and again, I think going the non-traditional route, going the YouTube route and doing it in-house versus going via ESPN Plus, doing that type of stuff, having your own control, being able to shape that narrative and find those next voices. Again, I agree with you. I think it would be nice if an established voice in the media picked up the Big 12 banner. But if no one's going to do it, it's time to create, the next personality. Find that homegrown person, pluck them up from the K-State HD.TV program. That shout out to Brian Smaller, who's doing a great job. They're placing folks all over the place. Place one of them and be part of that flagship Big 12 school. Place one of them and be part of that, that women's sport wrap-up show that goes out every, Monday afternoon or Sunday evening. I think that'd be great. And going to that YouTube thing, talking about the off season, everything's, there's Paul Feinbaum, there's all this stuff about these other conferences that keep the conversation going. This isn't directly about any of the teams or anything like that, but have on this revamped Big 12 YouTube, have every week, hey, this is Central Florida week or UCF week, sorry. And on Monday, UCF produces the history of UCF, the institution. On Wednesday, history of UCF, the athletic department. And then on Friday, hey, here is the tour of Orlando, the campus hotspots. Here's the brewery. Here's the college kid bar. Here's the barbecue. Triple B's, straight B's, not straight A's, straight B's. And that is the programming where it's, hey, get to know these institutions, have fun with the people who know these institutions, the hot spots. Because I'll tell you this, I would 100% watch a 30-minute YouTube episode produced by each school talking about, hey, here are the hot spots. Here's the local brewery. Here's, the best place to get barbecue. Here's the best bike trail. Come up with some sort of shtick. I just went with the letter B. That's what I think. And then also TikTok. The kids love TikTok. I don't know anything about TikTok, but get on TikTok. The Friday Night Lights tour. No, you have a TikTok takeover of some, sorority girl or frat guy with a big following. And hey, I'm showing you the Friday Night Light tour. Here's us tailgating. Here's us having fun. And here's another one. This is going to make any old people who listen to this, their heads blow up. I read a story, it was like 3 years ago, that I think it was Penn State gave 5 full ride scholarships to these high school senior TikTok influencers. They didn't say on their platform, hey, I'm going to Penn State because they're giving me a full ride. No, they just said, hey, I'm going to Penn State. And the agreement was, hey, show life as a Penn State student, broadcast the good parts of being a Penn State student for us. And they said that they saw, interactions, enrollment applications go up. I legitimately think, and this has nothing to do with the Big 12 conference, but the individual institutions, I wish K-State would find 15, high school seniors that have a big following on TikTok who sell this life as an influencer and say, hey, here's a full ride, pledge a fraternity, pledge a sorority, or get super into clubs. Try to broadcast to where the high school students are, present our school as, hey, this is fun, this is cool, this is a realistic option, even if you're not just a kid from Topeka, Kansas, and find a way to get to where the kids are watching. Because I watched the Bama Rush documentary on HBO Max, and the way that Alabama and Arkansas and some of these SEC schools have grown like crazy, it's all because the outfit of the day and the hot students going into Greek life, all on TikTok, all on social media. I'm not saying you have to be that shallow. I'm not saying it has to be that on the surface, but finding a way to go beyond the traditional. We're mailing you a placard saying, hey, 92% of students get some sort of scholar. You have to find new ways to promote, to market your institutions, to make it a cooler place to go and do that. Again, I'm sure a bunch of old people, if there are any old people listening to podcasts, their head are exploding, listening to me promoting, saying, hey, give out TikTok scholarships. But you have to do something to find ways to grow your, the young, hip, cool kids going to college. And it's worked for places like Penn State. It worked for, places like LSU. It's worked for Alabama, Arkansas. It's worked for USC, UCLA for decades. Finding a way to present that, get beyond some of these generic stereotypes. So
it all goes back to the same thing of we are not, and I hate this, it's just the reality, like none of these decisions are being made for 60-year-old alumni from insert Big 12 school.
They're not being made
like,
for the 32-year-old alumni.
You're already a fan. You're established. You're set. We're not like, you're going to go and you're going to watch and you're going to buy and you're going to wear and you're going to cheer. That's not what to grow a brand is not just reinforcing people who are already committed. Well, I'm just going to stop caring. No, you're not. Don't lie. Stop it. We have to bring in new people. And so we have to go to them the places they want to be and do the things that they want to do. That's what was done for you when you were young. It's just that what you liked then and what people like now are not the same. And I've never understood each generation. I'm like, I don't look at them. Like, I'm not big on TikTok, but like, cool. If that's where they want to be, let's go. If they want to be on YouTube, let's do it. I'm not going to start a TikTok because I don't have time for that, but that's awesome. And if you're good at it, people look at things on social media as somebody who works in marketing and works in social media is like, anyone can do that. If anybody could do it, everyone would be super successful at it. But just because Joanne posts daily about her crazy theories and her 12 friends all comment and like every single time doesn't mean that she knows what she's doing. Okay? Some people are dumb luck. Some people are just really smart. It does require an understanding of how to do this stuff correctly, and it takes an investment. And so I think investing into the areas where people are, that's what you got to do. Like, if we build it, they will come. No. Okay. If you put a taco stand in the middle of a desert, 20 miles from anyone, cool. I don't know. If you promote it well, people might show up. And if it's the best damn taco you've ever had, great. Scott, this has been fun. This is a nice break from like serious conversation and talking about sports and trying to figure out depth charts in the Big 12 because I'll say this, if I have to go to our lads to figure out your depth chart for your defensive backs, then your media coverage is ass.
I don't think you're wrong.
Just, why would you go there? Because no one else has one. Anywho, Scott, do me a favor. Where can everybody check out everything you do to cover the mighty Purple Wildcats?
Yeah, at Scott Wildcat on Twitter. I tweet a lot about uniforms just because I make a comment about Adidas having a very general template that they're using for a lot of schools for football. I'm not, telling you that your son and daughter are worthless. I'm not. I promise. People got really mad that I pointed out that UTEP and KU had like the exact same uniform template, and KU fans took it very personally. When I loved KU's new uniforms. I think they're great. I was just making a comment about Adidas's template work, which I was very harsh on Adidas for their template work with MLS. Folks, I have a track record. This was not me taking a pot shot at KU, I promise. But at Scott Wildcat, I'll talk all things uniform, too much, U.S. and Sporting KC soccer for the folks because they don't really like that. But K-State, at Boscoe's Boys, we got 2 episodes a week in July, and against my better judgment, we are going back 5 days a week in August. Maybe only 4 days a week up until December. Maybe it'll be 5 all the way through December. Stay tuned. We're still kind of workshopping since we won't have our usual live shows. Those could be coming back in a format. Just everyone stay tuned at Boscoe's Boys. Yeah. And just one final thing, support your local podcasts, support places like 1012 Network, listen to your independent fan run podcasts, because I think there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the sports media world. I think some of the big J's sometimes get out of touch with the coverage. And I think that the closer you can get to your team, the teams that you enjoy listening to and following, if you can support those shows, listen to those shows, interact with those shows, it's only going to encourage them to keep going. Other shows that pop up that you might actually like more. And I think that as the sports media world is changing, as the sports media world is getting more hyper focused on just the playoff or just pro sports, I think making sure that independent or even fan run media entities, it's healthy and it gives you more content to listen to, and migrating away from them just because, they might not sound professional and they might not, be the exact brand you've come to listen or to think about when it comes to sports media. Keep giving them a shot. I want to see more and more Big 12 podcasts out there. I want to see more and more K-State podcasts out there, because the more the merrier. And I think the more differentiation that's out there, it's going to make those people who maybe take your patronage or your listenership, your participation in their circles for granted. It's going to only make them better as well. So that is my soapbox for the day. And, I've gone longer than you wanted me to, so it probably won't be until October that you bring me back on. But whenever you ask, I'll be here.
My point's always this. Remember the people that cared about you before you got good. Because, national media is going to hook on when you're a story. And when you stop being a story, they're going to abandon you. If someone wants to talk about you when you're 6-6 3 years in a row, or don't go bowling, remember them when you're 10-2 and contending for a conference championship, because they're still going to talk about you, even when you fall off. But the national ones aren't. All they're going to do is say, hey, maybe their head coach will leave for a Big Ten job.
Scott, one final thing. How many like mid to lower tier Big Ten jobs have to come up and them not be able to just pick whoever they want out of, the Big 12? How will that narrative ever stop outside of the Matt Campbell memes?
No, because you can go make Big Ten money, and that's all that matters.
I mean,
here's the clue. You either have to go to a school where you can win a national championship, or you have to go to the school that'll pay you the most money. And if you don't do one of those two things, then you don't. You're an idiot, I guess. I don't know.
We saw it with the Nebraska job. Nebraska tried really effing hard, and I didn't want to drop an F-bomb on your show because
thank you. I appreciate that.
I know you're more highbrow, and sorry, I know you're trying to end it, but Nebraska tried like how they threw a Brinks truck, and I know it on very intimate terms that was what was offered to Chris Kleiman. I have a pretty good idea of what they tried to gauge with Lance Leipold, as much as I probably would have liked for him to go off, because I don't want KU to be good, but they couldn't do it. Both of those coaches wanted to stay. Purdue tried to make overtures at Chris Kleiman. He didn't even entertain. He didn't even want to see an offer. Now all these think pieces from someone with the last name of a office supply store that went out of business, used to have a podcast that I fought with. Now he's at, a subscription site, a new subscription site, trying to say that, what?
New subscription site.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But it went from one subscription site to another. Trying to say, why wouldn't Lance Leipold? Why wouldn't Chris Kleiman? Why wouldn't Matt Campbell? Again, Matt Campbell jokes, I make them myself. But come on. Northwest. No, come on.
Andy Office Max is a very well established member of the sports media.
Just lazy.
Northwestern could be the Kentucky job of the Big Ten if they wanted it to be. Just come win 8 games every year. We'll pay you ridiculous sums of money because we're happy with that. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know, man.
It's stupid. But I love you, Phillip. Thank you for bringing me on.
Always a pleasure, bud. It won't be October. It might be November. I kid. We'll talk to you again soon, bud.
Yeah, talk to you later.